In the 1930s and 1940s, a Memphis newspaper ran photographs of children for adoption, presented almost like merchandise. A photograph, a name, a short description, available for adoption. That was not an accident, and it was not an isolated ad. It was standard practice at one specific agency, run by one specific woman, operating with the full backing of the state of Tennessee. Her name was Georgia Tann. For 26 years, she ran the Tennessee Children's Home Society in Memphis. She is estimated to have taken more than 5,000 children. At least 19 of them died in her care. She was never charged with anything. She died 3 days before the state tried to change that. Here is where it starts. In 1924, Tann took over the Memphis branch of the Tennessee Children's Home Society. On paper, it was a licensed adoption agency. In practice, it became something closer to a supply chain. Tennessee law allowed licensed adoption agencies to charge a placement fee. It did not allow them to charge a price. At home, in Tennessee, Tann charged about $7. Out of state, to families in New York and California, some of those same placements cost as much as $5,000. Between 1940 and 1950 alone, records show the agency placed 3,000 children into just those 2 states. The method was simple, and it worked because nobody was positioned to stop it. Tann targeted mothers who were poor, unwed, or otherwise unable to fight back. She took children directly from hospitals before mothers were released, sometimes before the mother had even signed anything. When parents asked where their children had gone, they were told the child had died. In several documented cases, the child had not died. The child had been sold. Some children were taken from mothers who had only asked for temporary help during an illness or a stretch of unemployment. They came back for their children and were told there was no record they had ever been there. Files were rewritten before they reached adoptive families. Medical histories were invented. A child's origin was erased and replaced with whatever story made the placement easier. None of this could have run for 26 years on one woman's authority alone. It required protection, and Tann had it. Shelby County Family Court Judge Camille Kelly signed off on the custody transfers Tann needed. When adoptive parents discovered they had been lied to and pushed back, Tann threatened them with legal action, and Kelly's court was where those threats became real. Kelly's docket moved cases through fast, and it moved them Tann's way. Above both of them sat Memphis political boss E. H. Crump, a man accustomed to bribes from the city's illegal gambling and brothel operations. Tann understood exactly what that meant and exactly how to use it. By the late 1940s, Tann was the head of the Adopted Children's Association of America. The woman running an unlicensed trafficking operation out of a Memphis mansion held a national leadership title in the field of adoption. Her clients were not secret either. Actress Joan Crawford adopted twin daughters through Tann's agency. So did June Allison and Dick Powell. The parents of professional wrestler Ric Flair adopted him through the society. New York's own governor, Herbert Lehman, adopted a child through Tann as well. Governor Lehman was not an anonymous buyer. He was the sitting governor of New York, later a United States senator, and he was also the man who signed the 1935 law, sealing New York birth certificates, the same kind of sealed record Tann relied on to hide what she was doing. There is no evidence Lehman knew how Tann was obtaining children. But the overlap is striking. The governor, who had signed New York's law sealing original birth records, would later adopt through an agency whose practices depended heavily on secrecy. Wealth was not incidental to this operation. It was the business model. Tann believed children belonged with what she called people of the higher type, and she built her client list to match. The children who could not be placed did not disappear from the story. They were kept in group housing, largely unsupervised. The staff who ran the nursery wore starched white uniforms and looked, by every account, like a professional operation. Most of them had no medical training at all. Several were, by multiple accounts, struggling with substance abuse of their own. Sick children were routinely denied care Tann considered inconvenient. A common, treatable childhood illness handled anywhere else became a death sentence inside her nursery. During the 1930s, Memphis had the highest infant mortality rate in the country. Investigators later connected a meaningful share of that number directly to Tann's operation. At least 19 of those children are buried today in a small plot at Elmwood Cemetery in Memphis. For decades, their graves had no headstones at all, only the first names Tann recorded for them: Baby Estelle, Baby Joseph. A memorial was finally raised in 2015, funded by public donation, not by the state and not by the society that put them there. In September 1950, Tennessee Governor Gordon Browning ordered an investigation into the society after reports surfaced that children were being sold for profit. 2 days later, the story broke nationally. The Memphis Commercial Appeal ran it. The New York Times ran it. Tennessee's own welfare commissioner estimated Tann and her associates had taken in as much as $1 million. Governor Browning assigned Memphis attorney Robert Taylor to build the case. Taylor built it. On September 15, 1950, 3 days before the state filed charges, Georgia Tann died of cancer. She was never prosecuted for anything. 3 months after her death, the state sued her estate for $500,000. It settled out of court for 2/3 of what she actually had, $82,000. Judge Camille Kelly resigned once the investigation began. A 1951 state welfare report found she had, in its words, failed on many occasions to aid destitute families and permitted family ties to be destroyed. It also concluded she had not personally profited. She was never charged either. She died in 1955. Now look at what the record actually leaves us with. 26 years, confirmed. More than 5,000 children, confirmed. At least 19 deaths in her care, confirmed. A judge enabled the transfers, confirmed. And Georgia Tann was never charged with a single crime, confirmed. One more thing belongs in this tally, and it is not about 1950. Georgia Tann's practice of writing false birth certificates for the children she placed did not stay in Memphis. It became standard adoption procedure across the country. For decades afterward, adoptees researching their own origins ran into sealed, falsified paperwork built on the exact model Tann pioneered to hide what she was doing. The scandal became part of the historical record that exposed what adoption could become when agencies operated without meaningful oversight. Many of the safeguards that define adoption today exist to prevent exactly the kinds of abuses Tann's operation exploited: home studies, background checks, waiting periods, independent court oversight, safeguards designed to make it much harder for one agency and one friendly judge to control the entire process. Here's what stays with me about this one. Nobody broke into a hospital nursery. Nobody needed to. A judge signed the paperwork. A political machine looked away. A national association gave her a leadership title. Every institution built to protect these children instead gave her the cover to take them. Some of those children are still looking for where they came from. Tennessee did not open its Tennessee Children's Home Society adoption records to search until 1996, 46 years after Tann died. Even now, some of the records she falsified were never corrected because the woman who wrote them died 3 days before anyone could make her answer for it. Georgia Tann did not invent the idea that a vulnerable child is worth more to some people as a transaction than as a person. That idea did not die with her. It just found better paperwork. Up next, on the Realize Files, UFOs Part 2, what the government admitted, what the records show, and what still doesn't have an answer, exposing real lies with real eyes.